Hi, welcome to another episode of Respections. I'm your host, Patrick Tomlinson, and today we are at the Poe Park and the Edgar Allan Poe house, which we'll do a feature on. So behind me is the house itself, and in front of me there's a very lively music festival, which we'll try to get a little bit of. So we're going to explore the house, look at a little bit of history behind it, and treat you to a couple of insights on the Poe house here in the Bronx, New York. So stay tuned for another exciting episode of Respections.
Okay, so if we could take a look at the small kitchen, the way that the house is laid out is that there are two floors. The bottom floor consists of the kitchen, the parlor, aka living room, and a small bedroom. The thing about this house is that everything in here is a period piece, so Poe did not own it, but it is from that time period. A big reason for that is that he lived here with his wife, Virginia Poe, and also his aunt, Maria Clem. When Poe died in 1849, his aunt sold a bunch of the furnishings, so it's very hard to say what is and did not belong to him, but it is safe to say that everything here is from that time period. I want to bring attention to this stove right here. This stove not only is a period piece, but it is also a Bronx artifact. It was made by a company called Dave's Ironworks. They were originally located and founded in Manhattan, and they ended up moving their operations to the South Bronx, hence why it is a Bronx artifact. Now, this particular model was made a few years after Poe had died. I believe it shows right there the year that it was made. Yep. And by the time that Poe moved here in 1846, he was renting the house from John Wheeler. He was paying a yearly rent of $100, and since other people also occupied the house after Poe did, including a dentist at some point, it is, again, very hard to say what did and did not belong to Poe. And if we can take a look at the fireplace right here. At the time when Poe moved here in 1846, the stove that you just saw, which was a Bronx artifact, we're starting to replace fireplaces, hence why it's boarded up right now. It was used in order to prevent hot air from escaping, which is why it's another reason that the house is made so small. If you look, a person that is 5'11" would probably feel very cramped in here. Again, since hot air rises, since the room is very small, the hot air would be trapped, hence why it was very useful during the winter times. Which also helps us segue into the next theme, involving the renovation projects that were done to the house. Then right here on the left, it is one of our most recent major renovation projects. As far as I'm aware, there have been 3 renovation projects, starting since the 1900s with the Bronx Society of Arts and Sciences, the New York Shakespeare Society, and this one is from the 2010s. During our renovation projects, we found objects inside the walls, writing tools, papers, empty corn on the cob husk, and all of that is used as insulation.
For the house.
Yep. In our last segment, when we were doing the Valentine Variant house, there was a panel where you could actually see inside the insulation.
Right.
And Valentine, being a blacksmith and having a good business, he was more middle class than this house and what Poe were. They were working class. And if you can recall the insulation from the Valentine house, it was much more sophisticated. If you recall, there was animal hair from cows, horses, but here they basically just put whatever they could find into the wall. A big thing that they found was a baby shoe, which, according to one of our visitors who manages poetry classes with students from the Bronx, a baby shoe was put inside houses when they were being made as a sign of good luck. So it was the equivalent of having a horseshoe at the door entrance. Now we are in the living room, aka the parlor. Again, everything in here is a period piece, and for the panels that you see laid about the room, they're actually on loan from the Baltimore Museum. The Baltimore Museum is also a house museum of Poe, so you can go there, see how he lived, what his lifestyle was like when he was in Baltimore.
But he moved around quite a bit, right?
Yes, he moved. Yeah,
quite a number
he moved
of places.
quite a number of places.
Why is that so?
So
He was born in Boston, right?
yeah. So he was born in Boston to Elizabeth Poe. She was an actress from England, and his dad's dad was a revolutionary figure. And so Poe's grandfather never approved of his dad's acting career in theatrics. And Poe's mom ended up dying when he was just 3 years old. It is said that Poe's dad had already deserted the family or was already dead by the time Poe's mom died. And he was adopted by the Allens family, who were in the tobacco industry. Some things about Poe is that he had 2 siblings. His sister had a mental handicap. She was mentally handicapped. She was taken in by a group that dealt with that. And his brother was adopted by his biological father's grandmother. And being in the Allens family, they were mostly based in Virginia. Being in the tobacco industry, they actually traveled abroad to England and Scotland during 1815, 1820. But Poe's foster dad never really liked him. He only really got adopted because his foster mom was a fan of Poe's mom and she was very fond of Poe. So that's the only reason that they took him in. His foster father didn't like him, so much so that when Poe went to university, he went to the University of Virginia to study ancient and modern languages. His dad knew that Poe was not going to pay the debts, and he did not want to pay the debts, so he basically told him to scram. He wasn't going to help him through college. Poe only really had 1 year of formal post-education.
Post-secondary education.
Yeah, my bad. And because of that, he ended up enrolling in the military. He went to Boston for that. He ended up being stationed in Virginia and also South Carolina.
Do you know what regiment he enrolled in or served in?
That
was it as a militia or the U.S. forces?
I can't really say for sure.
Okay.
But he was stationed at forts, if that could be an indicator for those.
Like the U.S. forces, yeah.
Very well.
Forces. And there was the Mexican War around that period of time, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was and then the Texas secession, where Texas seceded. It was a republic for around 1840, around the same time, and it became a republic for a number of years. Then it joined the Union. Mm-hmm. So there's quite a lot of activity around that time. Mm-hmm. Okay, so
Poe was in the military. He went to Boston and he enrolled there. He ended up releasing his first set of poems called Poems by Edgar Allan Poe, very original.
Okay. This is probably something that his writing desk would be something like what he would be sitting around and composing his writings and his poems.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I can't remember if it was his first sets of poems or first set of short stories that he did when he enrolled in Boston in the military. But again, after that, he did a lot of traveling as a writer. He ended up also going to New York and being part of the West Point Academy, which for our viewers, it's basically the Harvard military school. In there, he did his first set of poems or stories. I can't remember, but he dedicated it to the cadet corps. He ended up going up to, I believe, Sergeant Major. He ended up being court-martialed for minor infractions. Before they could reach a decision on that, though, he left, again, to pursue his writing career. I don't know whatever happened with the court-martial, because when Poe enlisted, he enlisted under the name Edgar Allan Perry instead of Edgar Allan Poe as we know him. So Yeah. But again, as a writer, he lived in Baltimore, Virginia, Philadelphia, Boston, Manhattan, the Bronx. And as you can see with this table, a good thing about it is that it's actually portable. You could fold it up and it has handles on the side. So it was very mobile.
Okay, can you... So this would be an original writing table?
Yes.
Okay.
But again, it did not belong to Poe.
Right.
In this room, however, the mirror on the right and the chair next to us is said to have belonged to Poe.
So this is the mirror that we're talking about, right?
Yep, that is correct.
Okay. Wow. And this chair here?
That chair is either most likely a period piece or
A replica?
Yeah.
Okay.
The chair behind us, though, that is said to have belonged.
Okay, so this chair, rocking chair, would be something that was original to the house or is original to the house?
Yeah. So again, Poe never owned the house. He rented it.
Okay.
He rented it for $100 a year. Other people occupied the house when he died in 1849, including the dentist. So it is extremely hard to say what did and didn't belong to him.
Right.
But it is of that time period.
Okay. Can you say anything about the general area at the time when Poe was living here in and around neighborhood? What was it like?
Yeah.
Types of immigrants, types of transportation?
So surrounding the local area, when Poe moved here in 1846, the only thing that existed was the Metro North Station. It wasn't named the Metro North Station. I can't remember the name of it.
Was it that Fordham?
Yes, the Fordham Metro North Station. That existed. The Fordham University also existed. It is said that the ringing of the bells at the university inspired Poe to write the poetry piece, The Bells. And aside from that, a hotel, a blacksmith, a couple residencies, and 2 taverns. Now, the type of people around the area were farmers, except for the teachers. They were Jesuits from Tennessee that came to teach at Fordham University.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this area was so rural that it was actually considered part of Westchester County. It is said that it was also possible for Poe to see Long Island Sound from here. And of course, given its original location, adjacent from here, he was able to see the Fordham campus from the hills.
And what would be some of the produce that the farmers would grow around here?
That I cannot say, but again, the park across from here used to be an apple orchard, so apples were definitely a part of that.
Okay. So Brandon, you did mention that this was not the original location of the home. Do you know if these floorboards here are original to the house?
Yes.
Okay.
Mostly that has been changed of the house is the plaster and renovations to the roof, but the integrity of the house has been maintained very well.
Okay.
We will take a look at the paintings that are hanged about. So Poe, being adopted by the Allens family, they were more middle class. Before that though, this is a bust which was unveiled at the park that used to be an apple orchard. It was unveiled in 1909 or 1913, I believe. One of those 2 dates.
Okay.
And it is a bust of Edgar Allan Poe.
Okay.
But again, first I want to bring attention to the bottom picture. Again, Allen's family, tobacco industry, they were very middle class. So Poe was accustomed to the good things in life. He wrote a piece called The Philosophy of Furniture. In it, he wrote about what his ideal room would have looked like.
Right.
And so on his 150th anniversary of his birth, the Brooklyn Museum took that paper and recreated his room as an exhibit, and that's what you see right here.
Okay. And the etching or the paint, well, it's not a painting, but the print above, this is...
So this is a romanticized depiction of the cottage. It serves as a contrast to the one on the left, which I want to bring more attention to, just because we actually have the original in our archives, which...
Okay. So let's have a look. This is kind of blurry. Yeah. Trying to get it in this light. Okay.
You got it?
Yeah.
Like it? Perfect. So this is a photostatic copy. We have the original at our archives, which is right next to the Valentine Variant House, which you did a show on one time. And so this was made by a guy named Charles Milatz, and it depicts the cottage on a dark and stormy night. Given that Poe wrote very gothic and arabesque type of poetry and short stories, I'd say he was definitely a fan of this one instead. This is a picture of the cottage in its original location. It features a guy named Arthur Stockton, which you can see on the bottom right around here. Arthur was the director of the Bronx Society of Arts and Sciences, and he, along with the New York Shakespeare Society, a poetry group in Manhattan, they were basically the saviors of the cottage. They helped preserve it and bring attention to it as a historic landmark, because it wasn't until 1950 or 1960s that they registered the cottage as a historic site, not only in New York, but across the entire US.
Okay.
Perfect. So what we are looking at right now is the bedroom of Virginia Poe. So the reason that Poe moved here from Manhattan was that she had tuberculosis, and since this was the countryside, he believed that the fresh air would be beneficial for her lungs. Unfortunately, that was not the case, and she passed away in 1847, only a year after they had initially moved.
Wow.
Yeah.
What effect did that have on him? Do you know?
Yeah. So obviously he was very depressed, so much so that people that were living around the area would have to come and take care of him. They would have to feed him and clean the house, even though his Aunt Maria Clem was the one in charge of that. But the bedroom was originally upstairs, but they moved Virginia downstairs because her condition just kept on getting worse. And because of that, people say that the bed and mirror are from the Poe family. But given that other people rented this place as well, it's very hard to say whether it was or not.
Okay. So we have some prints here.
Yep. So, for those who have read Poe, Poe, he obviously wrote a piece called The Raven, or The Crow as others know it. It is one of his most popular pieces that people know him by. And the thing about that is that Poe actually did write pieces in here. A very dark story that he wrote was The Cask of Amontillado. It's about two Italian guys at a carnival somewhere in Europe. One of them tries to get revenge on the other, lures him to his family catacombs under the impression that they're going to drink some wine, and he ends up entombing him alive. So he wrote that piece here. Again, Poe didn't only just come here to help his wife, but he still continued to write pieces. And on the left is another panel, which again is on loan from the Baltimore Museum. There are 4 Poe museums across the East Coast, and 3 of them are house museums. And the panels are about the life and death of Virginia Poe. It is said that because Virginia died here, she was buried in a local cemetery near here, and the city was going to demolish it. A person found out, ended up digging her corpse up and keeping her body under his bed for months, until eventually they took her to Baltimore, where they buried her with Poe.
Wow.
Yeah. And so there are some paintings I want to bring attention to in this room. For those who are locals, this is a depiction of High Bridge. It depicts Poe walking the bridge on a snowy winter night. Again, still exists today. You can still walk it. I think Poe would have liked this painting as well. Again, he wrote very macabre, gothic, arabesque type of style. And then as for the piece in the middle, Poe's biggest dream was to have his own magazine that he would have named The Stylist. In it, he would write about the latest plays, theatrics, poetry, basically art. And it's kind of ironic because Poe was very critical of writers during his time. So much so that they nicknamed him the Tomahawk Man because of how brutal he was with his reviews. And at this time, when Poe moved here, he was actually already famous. People were already talking about him. He was already known amongst residents in New York. And Poe actually did end up owning a magazine. He helped kickstart one in Manhattan, but when he bought it, it ended up failing. And then obviously you have Poe's most famous portrait is Ultima Thule, which...
And this is a picture actually, right? It's not a painting.
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, I can't confirm that.
It's not. It's definitely not a painting. That's a picture. It might be a print or picture or.
It's a photograph.
Yeah, it's a photo. It's a photo. Because that's when photographs were actually sort of making their debut. You know, being daguerreotypes and so forth. This was around that period, 1840s, 1850s. Okay.
So now we are in the second floor of the Poe Cottage, and so, sorry about that. And so the second floor is divided into two major rooms. The writing room, which is where Poe would have done his writing. Right now, again, is the New Eurekan exhibit. So you will see the typewriter that John McNamara, who was at one point the Bronx historian and the guy who wrote the History on Asphalt, that's his typewriter, but it shows what Pedro Pietri would have written with during his time. But in here, Poe would have written Ula Lum, which was his experience of losing a loved one. Again, Virginia Poe died. He had depression because of that. Again, the bells as well, inspired by the ringing of the bells at Fordham University. He also wrote a piece called Eureka, which Poe himself considered his masterpiece, his magnum opus. So a lot of people know Poe for the Raven / the Crow, the Black Cat, the Telltale Hearts, and those rings. But Poe, again, considered Eureka his masterpiece. He wrote it while he was dealing with his depression, and when people were coming here to take care of him, they were clothing, feeding, taking care of the house. When he published it, people started to think that he wasn't going insane because it was very scientific in his explanation of the cosmos and universe. But like most artists, they consider their masterpiece to be something different than what most people would. And this is where Poe would have written a bunch of that stuff. He also wrote Annabelle Lee here, which a lot of women started to come out saying they were the inspiration for it, but obviously not, since it was definitely Virginia that inspired him to write that.
So this is a painting of Poe now, okay? So
yeah, but it is not original.
It's not original, okay.
And then this room, actually, it said that Poe was 5'6", 5'8", so what you would see is a life scale. This right here is Poe's graveyard in Baltimore. We don't really know what Poe died of. We think he died of something called cooping, and we know that because of how we found Poe. So the idea of cooping is that politicians would pay hoodlums to kidnap, beat, and intoxicate someone so they can go and vote again at the voter polls. And because the workers at the polls would see they had different clothes, they would think it's somebody else, leading to more votes than what you normally should be doing, which is one. And they found Poe in the streets of Baltimore with clothes that were too small for him, an indicator of cooping. But again, he was beaten, intoxicated. They found him in the streets. Who knows how long he was outside, so maybe he got something from the elements. His mom died of tuberculosis, so did his brother. Virginia did as well. Maybe he had tuberculosis and it didn't show up until later. and they took him to the hospital, never recovered, and he died. So it's very hard to say what he died of. And this right here is not the original tombstone. The original tombstone used to look like a stereotypical tombstone, which is just a little oval, but it had a raven emblem at the top. But they changed it to this, and again, they moved Virginia from here to Baltimore, so they're buried together.
Listen up, team. When I look around this room, I see a fighting team of brave antibodies. But the flu is coming in strong, so I won't sugarcoat it. I need each one of you on your A game. The good news is, Anthony, the human body we've been tasked to protect, just got his flu shot, which supplied us with brand new gear to defend against the flu. That's right, we've upgraded our game with this new equipment. They give you a little extra boost. So let's go fight for Anthony, for his mom, his co-workers, that nice lady Patricia that lives down the street with the cute dog. In the face of viral adversity, we make Anthony thrive so he can protect himself and the people he loves most. Are you with me? Yeah!
Let's work as a team to defend against the flu. Gear up with a flu shot to help protect others and reduce your risk of being sick or hospitalized with the flu. Learn more at getmyflushot.org.
So, you said, Brandon, there's another exhibition upstairs that you'd like to introduce us to, and it's called The Gypsy.
The Surrealist Gypsy and the Poet. So, for those who are from Europe, I want to note that they don't use gypsy as the derogatory term that it is used to describe people from Romani, but rather as the art form of it. So the exhibit is on Margarita and Pedro Pietri. Pedro is considered the godfather of the Nuyorican poetry movement. Nuyorican was a term used to insult Puerto Ricans that immigrated to the US. The Puerto Ricans reclaimed it, and the thing about Pedro is that he helped make it an intellectual movement. He was a fan of Poe's. He and Margarita had one of their first dates here. Margarita, as the wife of Pedro, she did art. And for those who know Frida Kahlo from Mexico, she did surrealism artwork, and that's what Margarita does as well. The artwork that you will see upstairs will have Taino and